2 children vanished without a sound. A loyal family dog froze at the doorway, terrified to cross, growling at a room it once played in, and a pink blanket appeared in the woods, folded neatly like it was waiting to be found. What did that dog sense? What are we missing? What really happened that morning? Why won't anyone give a straight answer? Before we go further, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Because the more people see this, the closer we get to finding out what happened to Lilly and Jack. Lilly Sullivan was just 6 years old. Quiet, smart, the kind of child who lined up her crayons before coloring. Her little brother Jack, only 4, loved muddy boots, toy trucks, and following Lilly everywhere she went. They lived in a small home off a quiet road in rural Nova Scotia, a place where neighbors wave from porches and children's laughter drifts across open fields, where Saturday mornings meant cartoons flickering on the TV and tiny feet pattering across wooden floors. But on May 2nd, that laughter stopped. No cries for help, no slammed doors, just silence. 2 children, gone, leaving behind a world that still smelled of pancakes and damp spring air. How does this happen? How do 2 kids vanish from a home without a single person seeing them leave? And what did the dog sense in that house on that morning that made it freeze in fear? May 2nd, 2025 started like any other morning. Breakfast dishes clinked in the sink while cartoons hummed softly from the living room. Lilly's small hands stacked her crayons, ready for another quiet morning of coloring. Jack, in his dinosaur pajamas, stomped around with a toy truck, leaving muddy boot prints from yesterday's play still drying on the floor. Their mother, Malehya, says she was just steps away, cleaning up breakfast while checking her phone, glancing at the TV, moving through the motions every parent knows. And then, silence. No giggles, no footsteps, just a heavy, hollow quiet. According to Malehya, Lilly and Jack somehow slipped through a sliding glass door that morning, a door that by all accounts opened without a sound, and wandered into the woods behind the house. No one saw them leave. No neighbor saw tiny figures crossing the yard. The family dog, usually restless, stood frozen at the threshold of one room, refusing to move. The clock kept ticking, but the children were gone. When Lilly and Jack were reported missing, the search began immediately. RCMP officers arrived with search dogs, canvassing the dense woods behind the Sullivan home. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning treetops and creek beds hidden beneath thick fog. Volunteers came from across Nova Scotia, trudging through mud, calling out the children's names, hoping for a cry back. Rain fell on and off, soaking boots and blurring the lines between forest trails and the underbrush. Parents held their children tighter as neighbors peered from porches, praying for news, any news. But days turned to nights, and the search turned up nothing. No footprints, no toys, no trace of Lilly or Jack. It was as if the forest had swallowed them whole. But what if the clues were closer than anyone realized? While the search parties combed the woods, something strange was happening inside the Sullivan home. The family dog, usually calm and eager to follow the children, began to act different. It paced back and forth in the hallway, claws tapping softly against the floor, its ears pinned back, eyes locked on a single room. Then it stopped. A low growl rumbled in its throat, deep and cautious. It refused to cross the threshold, backing away, hackles raised, as if warning of something unseen. No command could coax it forward, no treat, no comforting voice. It was afraid, and that fear was focused on one room. What was it sensing that day? A few days later, searchers found something that stopped them in their tracks. A pink blanket, not crumpled in the mud or caught on a branch, but laid out near the edge of the woods, clean, folded, untouched by rain or dirt. It wasn't in the laundry basket. It wasn't in the house. It was here, in the quiet shadows, waiting. A child's blanket should be warm on a bed, clutched in small hands, carrying the scent of home. But this one was alone, soft and out of place, whispering of questions no one wanted to ask. Was it a clue or a distraction? And who placed it there? Inside the home, something else was quietly unraveling. Cheryl, a family friend, said she could feel it in the air, subtle tension that didn't match the story of a normal morning. She noticed how conversations paused when certain questions came up, how glances shifted, how silence felt heavier than words. The timeline was vague. No one could say exactly when Lilly and Jack were last seen, or who saw them at what time. In a world of doorbell cameras and phone timestamps, that silence felt like a missing piece no one could find. And then there was Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather. Logan, his own cousin, stepped forward, saying she had seen the texts, messages that were sharp, aggressive, and controlling, messages that hinted at frustration and anger in the days leading up to Lilly and Jack's disappearance. These were not just rumors. They were signals of a deeper story waiting to be uncovered. And then came the messages Logan would reveal. She said they weren't just casual frustrations or short-tempered words. These texts from Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather, were sharp, controlling, and sometimes laced with threats that made her pause. They hinted at arguments, at moments when anger spilled into accusations, at a man who wanted control when things felt uncertain. Cheryl felt it too, inside the home. The way voices dropped when Daniel entered a room. The way laughter would stop, replaced by quiet tension. She noticed how questions about Lilly and Jack's routines were met with vague answers, how the timeline of that morning felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. And in the days before Lilly and Jack disappeared, Daniel's messages had grown more intense. Logan described them as a pattern, small storms building into something heavier. They were messages about respect, about authority, about things needing to be done a certain way. And if they weren't, there were consequences. This wasn't just family tension, it was a pattern of behavior that often hides in plain sight until something goes terribly wrong. And when the children vanished, these messages became more than words on a screen. They became potential clues. Because what if these texts weren't just frustrations? What if they were warnings? Logan didn't come forward to point fingers. She came forward because she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She described the texts Daniel Martel sent in the weeks before Lilly and Jack vanished, texts that weren't overt threats, but carried an edge, a need for control, a frustration that simmered, messages about respect and obedience that made Logan uneasy. They weren't enough to call the police, they weren't enough to prove intent, but together, they painted a picture of tension, of a man who struggled when things slipped out of his control, of moments when small conflicts turned into long silences. Logan shared these messages not to accuse, but because she believed they might matter. She described how Daniel's tone could shift quickly, how minor disagreements could spiral, how he sometimes hinted that people needed to remember their place. And on the morning Lilly and Jack disappeared, Logan remembered the look on Daniel's face when he spoke about the children, about the stress in the home, about how everything felt like it was falling apart. None of this proves what happened to Lilly and Jack, but it raises questions, because sometimes it's not a single action that reveals the truth. Sometimes it's a pattern, and Logan believed this pattern mattered. It wasn't one big clue that would break this case wide open. It was the small things, a faint boot print in damp soil, too light to confirm, but small enough to match the foot of a child who loved to stomp in mud puddles. Was it Lily's? Was it Jack's? Or was it nothing at all? A half-empty water bottle found near the tree line, its label faded from rain, the cap still on, a detail so ordinary it's easy to overlook, but to investigators it was logged, bagged, and taken for testing. Because sometimes, even a smudge or a fingerprint can whisper the truth. And then the pink blanket, folded neatly, placed near the woods where the tree shadows fall thick and heavy. No mud on the fabric, no tears along the edge, no drag marks in the grass. It wasn't abandoned. It was left intentionally, or so it seemed. Some say there was a single hair found on that blanket. Some say partial DNA was pulled from its threads. The RCMP hasn't confirmed it, but people close to the case whisper about it, about the tests, about the waiting, about the quiet frustration that comes with samples that can take weeks or months to process, knowing that somewhere in a lab, under a microscope, might be the key to bringing Lilly and Jack home, because it only takes one strand, one cell, one undeniable match to change everything. And it raises the question, was the blanket a breadcrumb left behind by someone who knows more than they've said? Or was it a decoy, a distraction to send searchers and suspicion in the wrong direction? In cases like this, it's the smallest details, a boot print, a water bottle, a single hair on a pink blanket, that often speak the loudest, but only if someone is willing to listen. Are we listening closely enough? Sometimes it's easier to get lost in the details, the timeline that never quite adds up. The pink blanket folded where it shouldn't have been. The way the dog froze, ears back, low growl rumbling in a room it refused to enter. The boot print, the water bottle, the whispers of DNA. But when you step back, the questions only get louder. How do two children, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, vanish without a trace in a world covered in cameras and footprints and digital trails? How does a mother say she was just steps away, and yet in moments, silence falls and stays? Why does the timeline remain so vague, with gaps no one can clearly fill, even months later? And what did the dog know that morning? What did it sense in that room that made it stop in its tracks, refusing to cross an invisible line? These aren't just questions for investigators, they're questions for all of us, because in a case like this, every second matters. Every missing minute matters. Every small clue might be the one that breaks open the silence. And if we stop asking these questions, who will? If you've made it this far, it means you care. And in cases like this, care can become action. Please, take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and share it with someone, because the more people see Lilly and Jack's story, the harder it becomes for it to disappear. Drop the name of your city in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from and tell us what you think happened that day. Because your voice, your reach, your questions, they matter more than you know. Algorithms don't solve cases, people do. And when we keep talking, keep sharing, keep questioning, we keep Lilly and Jack's story alive. Two children, two small voices swallowed by silence. Let's not let them be forgotten.